You know that feeling when you're just navigating the day-to-day and you think, there's got to be more to this, but I just don't have time to read a library.
Yeah, that desire for like deeper understanding without the total information overload.
Exactly. Well, you've landed in the right place. Welcome to the deep dive.
We basically take a stack of sources, and for you, the listener, we try to pull out the core insights.
Yeah, the stuff that really clicks,
Yeah.
without all the fluff.
And today, our focus is precisely on that kind of learning, quick, thorough, and hopefully with those satisfying aha moments.
Right. We want to explore a topic deeply, but keep it structured, engaging, and, well, respect your time.
Absolutely. For this deep dive, we've immersed ourselves in a YouTube transcript from Rabbi Itamar Schwartz. The original Hebrew title is, well, it's long, but it translates roughly to Know Your Hishtabdus 006, Awareness of Our Actions and Renewal Through Connection and Disconnection.
Okay, so the key concept there is Hitchadshut.
Hitchadshut, yeah. It's often understood as solitary contemplation or maybe self-seclusion. It's rooted in Jewish tradition. But the principles Rabbi Schwartz talks about, they offer, I think, valuable perspectives for pretty much anyone seeking greater self-awareness.
For sure. So our mission today is to unpack the essential principles of Hitchadshut as he presents them in this source.
We're going to focus on the practical steps, the core philosophy.
Yeah.
Try to cut through any, potential jargon.
Get you the clear, need-to-know information. Okay, let's dive in. The rabbi starts off by briefly mentioning some initial ways to achieve a general sense of quiet.
Yeah, like quieting the body and soul, the external senses first.
He does note there are deeper dimensions, right? Involving imagination, tackling negative traits.
He does. Things like ingrained anger or strong desires. He touches on how quieting those root issues is important for inner peace. But for today, we're going to mostly stick to the more foundational stuff.
Makes sense. Keep it focused.
Getting that inner stillness first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He really emphasizes that this basic level of inner quiet is like the necessary first step for everything else he talks about.
And here's where it gets interesting. He kind of challenges the common idea of Hitchadshut.
Yeah, that it's just about private prayer or confession.
Right. His central idea is that Hitchadshut is actually a process. It's designed to take you from Hishtabdus, that's the initial state of solitude or separation,
Okay.
towards avoda, which means something like meaningful action or service in the world.
So solitude is the starting point, not the end goal.
Exactly. And this transformation, he argues, happens through cultivating awareness and attentiveness.
Yeah.
It's about what that solitude enables.
Right. A means to an end. And he lays out stages for developing this awareness.
He does. 6 stages, actually.
6. Well, what's stage 1?
Stage 1 focuses on the most tangible things,
Uh-huh.
our physical actions, our speech, and our thoughts.
The basics?
Yeah. The very first step, he says, is to consciously observe, recognize, and listen to these parts of ourselves.
So just noticing. What am I actually doing? What am I saying? What's running through my head?
Precisely. That's the foundation, becoming mindful of those things.
Okay, so starting with the basics, where does it go from there? Stage 2.
Building on that, stage 2 is turning that awareness inward to our feelings.
Yeah.
What emotions are actually present in a given moment.
Getting in touch with the emotional landscape.
Right. Then, stage 3 delves even deeper into the subconscious forces, those hidden drives and motivations that often operate just beneath the surface.
Wow, okay. So we're moving progressively inward. From actions and words to feelings to the subconscious. What's stage 4?
Stage 4 takes us to what he calls the superconscious, or maybe a higher source of our soul.
Superconscious. How does he describe that?
You might think of it less like a mystical place and more like those moments of intuition, or feeling connected to something larger than yourself, something beyond just the physical body.
Okay, I can sort of grasp that.
Yeah.
And stage 5?
Stage 5 turns inward again. It's about observing, recognizing, and listening to our own essential being, our core self, beyond the fleeting thoughts and emotions.
That sounds profound. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
What's the final stage, number 6?
The 6th stage is described as, well, complete connection to the divine.
Okay.
But he's really clear this isn't something you just, achieve overnight.
No, I bet not.
It's a gradual climb through these levels, and he specifically warns against trying to skip steps.
Like jumping straight to deep spiritual accounting without even knowing what you did yesterday.
Exactly. He uses the analogy of a ladder. You can't just leap to the top rung.
Makes total sense. Step by step.
And he reassures us, this is a lifelong journey. Each period of practice lets you go a bit deeper, a bit more internal.
So that's the framework.
Yeah.
Does he then get into, like, how you actually start doing this, the practical bits?
He does. The very first practical step he addresses is something probably a lot of us can relate to, just getting comfortable with being alone.
Yeah, that can be harder than it sounds.
Definitely. He acknowledges that for some, solitude can be genuinely difficult, maybe because of past experiences, trauma even.
And he says you need to deal with that first.
He points out that if trauma is involved, addressing that has to be the priority. He doesn't detail how, but recognizing it is key.
Crucial point.
Yeah.
But what about for people who just aren't used to it? No specific trauma, just not comfortable.
For them, he suggests a really gentle approach. Super gradual.
Like what?
Start with just 1 minute. 1 minute of being alone each day. And then very slowly increase that time as you feel more okay with it.
Just 1 minute. That seems doable.
Right. He even suggests if that feels tough at first, maybe start with some quiet background music and then gradually fade it out over time.
Like easing into the silence.
Exactly. The key, he says, is just getting accustomed to being alone calmly. The initial goal isn't what you do, just being okay alone.
Okay, step 1. Get comfortable with quiet solitude, even just for a minute. What's next?
Once that feels a bit more natural, the next practical step is something called Hezben Nefesh.
Hezben Nefesh. Spiritual accounting. Self-reflection.
Yeah, that's the idea. He suggests about 5 minutes a day for this.
5 minutes. Still sounds manageable. What do you do in those 5 minutes?
Initially, just think about the general things you did during the day. Both the things you feel good about and the things you maybe regret.
Both. Good and bad.
Yes, and he really stresses this. Think about both the positive and the negative. It's important to avoid just focusing on your mistakes or shortcomings.
That's a great point. It's so easy to just beat yourself up.
Totally. He even says, look, if thinking about both feels too hard at first, just start by focusing only on the good things you did.
Okay, that takes the pressure off a bit.
For sure. And he acknowledges, look, in 5 minutes, you're only hitting the general points. But the main thing is building that habit of reflection.
Got it. Get comfy alone, then start a brief daily reflection, positive and negative if possible. What follows that?
This is where he circles back to that core principle: observation, recognition, and listening. He explains that this initial Hezben Nefesh, this reflection, is often quite intellectual. We're thinking about our actions, analyzing them in our heads.
Makes sense. Like, was that the right thing to say?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Exactly. Then he introduces a deeper level of Hezben Nefesh called Habata,
Habata.
which means observation. This isn't just thinking about the action, it's actively trying to return to it, to vividly picture yourself doing it.
Oh, okay. Like replaying a memory.
Kind of, but maybe more vividly, more objectively.
Yeah.
He uses a great analogy.
Yeah.
It's the difference between just knowing that 2 + 2 = 4
Uh-huh.
and actually picturing 2 apples being put next to another 2 apples. One's a concept, the other's like seeing it happen.
I see. More direct, less abstract.
Precisely. He suggests trying to observe yourself almost from the outside, like you're watching a movie of yourself. Yes. He says it's not just imagination, it's cultivating a deeper faculty of awareness.
Watching yourself. How do you even start doing that?
He gives some really concrete examples, like if you have any recordings of yourself, watch them. Look at photos of yourself.
Okay.
Even try to picture yourself sleeping. Or maybe ask someone to take a candid photo of you when you're not aware.
Interesting.
Or just try observing yourself in different situations. How are you when you're stressed versus relaxed? Start noticing those patterns.
It sounds like creating a bit of distance almost to see yourself more clearly.
That's a good way to put it. He gives an example. Imagine yourself at a crowded party. Picture how you interact. What do you actually look like doing that?
Right. Not just how you felt, but what was actually happening externally.
Exactly. And he clarifies, at this stage, the focus is purely on Habata, just the observation part.
Not yet understanding why you did it or anything deeper?
Nope. That comes later with recognition, Hakara, and listening, Akava. First, just build the muscle of observing.
And all of this observation practice, he says, needs that foundation of inner calm we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. He uses that analogy of watching calm waves. The stiller the water, the clearer the reflection.
Nice.
So working on achieving some inner quiet before you try to do this intense observation is really crucial. And doing gently, not forcing it.
Okay, that makes sense. Build the calm, then practice observing. The transcript also had some Q&A bits, right? Listener questions.
Yeah, and they were really helpful. One person asked about that difficulty focusing on the positive during Hezbollah Nefesh. They found themselves just dwelling on the negative.
Yeah, I can see that happening easily.
So Rabbi Schwartz offers this interesting perspective. He talks about the idea that on some deep level, both good and bad experiences ultimately come from the divine, from a higher source.
Okay. How does that help with negativity?
Well, the idea is, while you absolutely need to take responsibility for your negative actions and fix them, recognizing this broader source might, for some people, lessen that feeling of harsh self-judgment or aversion to those parts of yourself.
Like it's part of the whole picture, not just a personal failing.
Sort of. But he adds a really important caution. This viewpoint might not be helpful if you already tend to be too easy on yourself about negative stuff.
Right. It depends on the person's tendencies.
Definitely. He links it back to seeing good deeds as gifts, but bad deeds stemming from our choices. We always have agency, thought, speech, action.
Always that choice point.
Okay.
What other questions came up?
Someone asked about the best time to do Hitchadshut, like before or after prayer.
Good question. Practical.
His answer was basically, it's totally personal. Depends on your own daily rhythm, your life circumstances. When do you feel most calm and focused?
Find your own best window.
Yeah. The key is finding a peaceful time where you can do the Hitchadshut practice and still feel present for prayer afterward, not totally wiped out.
Makes sense. You don't want one to detract from the other. Was there anything about deeper levels of reflection?
There was. Someone asked about looking at the underlying will or subconscious motivations behind actions, mentioning Rabbi Dessler's teachings on Hezbollah Nefesh.
Getting into the why behind the what.
Exactly. And Rabbi Schwartz confirmed, yes, that is a deeper level, but he reiterated his step-by-step approach.
Start with actions, then speech, thoughts, feelings.
Right. Then conscious feelings, subconscious, superconscious, essence, and finally, connection. He emphasized that the current focus is deliberately on those first, more accessible stages. Build the foundation first.
Gradual ascent, like the ladder analogy. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And the last question.
It was about how to get better at understanding what you observed during Habada. Like, okay, I saw myself do X, but what does it mean?
Yeah, the interpretation part.
And again, he gently redirects. He stresses that the current goal is just developing the ability to observe. The recognition, Akara, understanding the significance, that's the next stage.
So be patient with the process.
Exactly. As a practical tip for just strengthening the observation itself, he suggested practicing more detailed observation, like playing spot the difference with your own reactions in various situations, sharpening the eye, basically.
Okay, so focus on the seeing first. The understanding will follow. Later in the talk, he shifts focus a bit, right, to talk about connection.
He does. He talks about how, as infants, our connection to the world is very basic. It's sense-driven, without much self-awareness.
Just taking things in.
Yeah. And he suggests that this early mode can sometimes lead to us, as adults, relating to the world in ways that are maybe a bit reactive, maybe not fully conscious or considered.
We just get swept along.
Kind of.
Wow.
So the big goal of Hitchadshut in this view is to build a new kind of connection. A mature, conscious, intentional way of engaging with the world, moving from being pulled along to choosing how you engage.
How do you do that?
This leads him to a really central concept he introduces, connection and disconnection. In Hebrew, Hitchadshut v'Hitnakut.
Connection and disconnection. Okay, tell me more.
The idea is that actively engaging with something could be an activity, a person, an idea, and then intentionally withdrawing, stepping back to reflect, is vital.
So engage, then pull back.
Right. Pull back, process, maybe connect back to yourself, and then re-engage, ideally with a fresh perspective. It's like this rhythmic movement.
Like taking a breath before diving back in.
Exactly. And this practice, he says, fosters something he calls renewed perception.
Renewed perception.
Yeah, the idea of looking at familiar things as if you're seeing them for the very first time. He draws a parallel to the idea in Jewish tradition that the Torah is considered new every single day.
Wow. So it's not just noticing a new detail on your coffee mug.
No, it's more fundamental.
Yeah.
It's about breaking that continuous, often unconscious, sort of static connection we have with things around us.
Seeing things with fresh eyes, literally.
Yes.
I don't know.
By intentionally seeing anew, you connect, then disconnect by turning inward or just pausing, return to yourself, and then connect again freshly. He uses the analogy of visiting a new place. First, everything is novel, then it becomes familiar. This practice is about finding the novelty even in the familiar.
Because there are always deeper layers, even in things we think we know well.
Precisely. And he gives practical exercises for this too.
Like what?
He suggests taking a picture that's meaningful to you and looking at it every day for a week. But each time, really try to see it as if it's the first time.
Okay.
Apply the same idea to other things, the sea, the stars, a landscape you see often.
What that automatic filter we put on familiar things.
Exactly. Another exercise is to look at something intently for, say, 30 seconds. Then close your eyes, turn your attention inward for a moment, then open your eyes and look again, trying to maintain that fresh inner state. Repeat that cycle.
So that trains the connection-disconnection muscle.
That's the idea. It helps combat that feeling of everything just becoming background noise.
Yeah, I like that. Does this apply beyond just seeing things?
Definitely. He extends the principle to other activities.
Can you give an example?
Sure, like when you're reading a book, instead of just powering through, try reading in focused bursts. Then pause, turn inward, maybe just for a breath or two, reflect briefly on what you just read, then go back to the book.
Breaking it up intentionally.
Or listening to something, like this deep dive perhaps. Listen to a segment, pause it, reflect for a moment, then continue.
So these intentional breaks, even if you don't have some huge insight right away, they still serve a purpose.
That's what he emphasizes. Even without immediate breakthroughs, the practice itself builds the foundation for deeper understanding. It leads to a lighter, maybe more joyful, more present engagement with life.
And he mentioned this helps with difficult times too.
Yeah, he touches on that. The idea being that if you cultivate this inner practice, this connection to yourself through Hitchadshut, you're maybe better equipped to navigate separations or losses. Your primary anchor is internal, and your connection to others becomes more consciously managed, less reactive.
That's a powerful thought. So how does he suggest people continue with all this?
Well, first, he encourages listeners to revisit these ideas. Maybe listen again, let it sink in.
Because it's a lot to absorb in one go.
For sure. He stresses that building this new way of relating observation, recognition, conscious connection, it's gradual, like a child learning and growing.
So be patient with yourself.
Absolutely. Go at your own pace. If you need to revisit earlier steps, like just getting comfortable with solitude, do that, even if we talk about newer topics later.
How do you know when you're ready to move on?
He suggests the indicator is when a concept feels like it's really settled naturally within you, in your heart, when it resonates.
Trust your inner sense of it.
Yeah. And regarding that renewed perception, he reminds us it starts with a conscious effort, an intention to look at things fresh, maybe even saying a little prayer for help with that. But the ongoing practice of connection and disconnection is what makes that renewal feel more natural over time.
Okay, so bringing this all together, this deep dive really shows Hitchadshut as, well, not just sitting alone, but a really dynamic path.
Yeah, a path to deeper connection with yourself, with the world, through actively cultivating self-awareness.
And it involves these manageable steps. Getting comfortable with solitude, doing that gentle self-reflection or hezbollah nefesh.
Developing that skill of objective self-observation, the habada.
And then embracing this powerful idea of renewed perception through that rhythm of connection and disconnection.
Exactly. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Just consider this. How might consciously engaging with and then intentionally stepping back from your daily experiences, even the really routine ones, how might that open up a richer, more present way of living for you?
Something to experiment with.
We really encourage you to maybe try some of these first steps. Notice any subtle shifts in how you perceive things, how you connect, and just keep exploring these ideas in your own way.